Every single part of you, including your own shadows, are actually important. Your whole being, your spirit, your mental, your psyche, your spirit needs love and balance. Imagine every single part of you, your light and your shadow, as being a completely separate entity. Your light is a nicer, gentler, higher consciousness, level part of yourself. And then your shadow is a lower part of yourself. The part of you that might be angry sometime, the part of you that might, be resentful, the part of you that, just like lower consciousness, right? The aspects of yourself that usually stays in the shadow because we don't like to shed too much light on it, because we don't necessarily prefer or like these parts of ourselves. The shadow is also a part of us that we just don't necessarily always acknowledge. The meaner, more judging, lower aspect of ourselves, basically. We seem to brush it off a lot of times, subconsciously or naturally, because it makes us feel uncomfortable. We're not necessarily proud of that part of ourselves. But the fact remains that these two aspects of ourselves, our light and our shadows, are both equally as important. But like any being, any entity, any person, it wants deep down to feel acknowledged and loved. Otherwise, you actually keep that part of yourself actually excluded. And basically, it kind of reminds me of a kid in school that actually gets bullied and actually gets excluded, not loved, and completely excluded from activities or with groups, for example. This being or energy actually feels unseen, unloved, unacknowledged, and it actually starts to build some resentment. And like I said, it really reminded me of a child that had actually being bullied. And as this resentment actually grows, sometimes it can become ugly. Sometimes the unfortunate happens and the person actually ends their life. Or, the resentment and anger grows so much that the shadow hasn't been acknowledged for too long. Then it becomes a monster. And then the person actually does, something as horrible as like a school shooting, for example. But basically, all it needed was actually love and being acknowledged and included. It needed love and integration. So by integrating your own shadow and actually loving it, integrating it, acknowledging it, shedding more light onto it, you actually help it heal. And by integrating it over time, it actually starts morphing and starts integrating and starts actually healing all of these past wounds of acknowledgement and, lack of love. And by doing that, naturally, eventually, it actually becomes a healthier, more integrated part of yourself. That's why, my friends, integrating your shadow is so important. It does not mean that you have to start hating on people or being resentful and stuff like that and giving too much power necessarily to that side of yourself, right? That side that you don't necessarily like. It does not mean that you have to let that darker, more shadowy aspect of yourself let loose, on a free ride necessarily. No. How do you actually integrate or even heal that shadow, you may ask? Well, you actually have to start analyzing the parts of you that you don't like, your shadow aspects, your shadow facets, the parts of you that you don't like. When part of you that you don't really like actually shows up in your life, whatever the circumstance. Basically, whenever you get angry, sad, frustrated, notice it. Start writing all of that stuff down on a sheet of paper, okay? Really start mapping it. Start mapping your shadow. You have to learn yourself a little bit more, all aspects of yourself, especially your shadows, because they haven't integrated within yourself yet. Analyze these parts of yourselves deeply. Where does it come from? Does it come from your childhood? Does it come from a past relationship? Does it come from a part of your past where something really traumatic actually happened? A trauma, right? Or anything that really triggers a really bad memory. But most of the time, it actually comes from the subconscious, and most of the subconscious has actually been formed during the first 7 years of our lives. So most of the time is actually childhood trauma, but not all the time. What's going to happen is that many times you actually go into a current situation, okay, and your shadow actually comes out. You get angry, you get frustrated, or something comes out of you, right? Well, most of the time, it's never because of the actual current situation that you're living in, because your subconscious is going to tell us, oh yeah, it's the current situation that's making me mad, but it goes much deeper than that. Okay, it's buried in our past, and we got to heal the past to heal the present. Okay, because the past has still some unstuck, unhealed energies within yourself that hasn't been resolved or even shed light onto yet. So our subconscious is actually going to fool us into thinking, oh yeah, it's this situation right now that's actually making me mad. But 95% of the time, it's always because of the past. Because once you're fully healed, nothing that happens in the present moment actually triggers you. So we're all on this healing journey together. So whenever you feel angry, you feel frustrated or whatever, you feel sad or whatever, it's connected basically to that same feeling. You know, the current situation triggers a feeling inside of you that hasn't been resolved, a past energy, right? And it's subconsciously, you don't even realize it, okay? But it a lot of times actually triggers the inner child, or triggers the part, you know, the past part of ourselves that actually are still wounded. So that past part of ourselves actually just needs healing and actually balance and lots of love, okay? So you actually have to write about it. You got to write a lot about it, okay? Until you actually figure it out, actually where it actually comes from, okay? And sometimes it might not necessarily come right away into your mind, okay? If you really try and you can't find it, you got to ask the universe, pray, whatever, ask the universe, you know, out in the open, or your higher self, or whatever you connect to spiritually, okay? You ask that higher intelligence, okay? Where does this actually come from? And eventually you will receive the answer. Actually, once you find the answer, it's going to be much, much easier to actually release it through whatever means, you know, works for you. Whatever healing technique, whatever energy releasing technique actually works for you. There are so many different techniques, okay? So you got to release all of this trapped energies, okay? This is the trick. Okay, but you got to find out actually where it comes from. Okay, my friends, I hope this actually helps. Sending so much love, so much light to all of you guys, okay? And if you still need help, you can always book a one-on-one coaching call with me, okay? My phone number is actually in the description below if you want to book actually a session. And yeah, happy healing to all of you guys, okay? So much love, so much healing, vibes your way, and an amazing 2026 ahead. I love you so much. Take care.